It was a Tuesday morning, and I was doing what I'd been doing most mornings for the last few months. I stood at the kitchen sink with warm water running over my hands, rinsing a coffee mug that wasn't even mine. The house was quiet in that half-awake way. The refrigerator hummed, a ceiling fan clicked softly as it turned. Somewhere upstairs a floorboard creaked and then settled again. I remember the dish towel in my hands. It was thin from too many washes, and it smelled faintly like lemon soap. That's when I heard Jessica's voice behind me. "You have 48 hours to get out of my house." She said it like she was reading a reminder off a screen. I turned slightly, and she was leaning against the counter with her phone in her hand, scrolling with her thumb. She didn't look up, not at first. Her other hand rested on her belly, the way pregnant women do when they're tired and trying to be comfortable. Marcus was near the doorway. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't holding anything. Just standing there with his shoulders rounded forward like he wanted to disappear into the wall. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask her what she meant, even though I knew exactly what she meant. I set the mug down in the drying rack, then I dried my hands slowly, like it was important to finish what I started. 48 hours, I repeated, mostly to confirm I'd heard her right. Jessica finally lifted her eyes for a second. Her expression was flat, not angry, just decided. "It's not personal," she said. "We need space. The baby's coming, and I can't handle this." She made a small motion with her phone, like I was something on a list. Hovering. That was the word she used next. She called it hovering, even though I'd been cooking their dinners, folding their laundry, and paying them $800 a month for a converted space that used to store holiday decorations. Marcus nodded once, not a big nod. A small one, like a reflex. I watched his mouth open and close before words finally came out. "Maybe it's time you find your own place, Mom," he said. His voice sounded far away, like he was speaking through a door. I let the quiet sit there for a moment. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear Jessica's thumb tapping her screen again. I looked at Marcus and waited. That was the first choice I made. I didn't fill the silence for him. I didn't rescue him from it. He didn't add anything. So I asked one question, and I kept my tone even. "When do you want me out?" Jessica's eyebrows lifted slightly. I think she expected tears, or bargaining, or a speech. "By the end of the week," she said. "That's fair." Fair. 5 days to pack up my life and move somewhere else, after 8 months of doing everything I could to be easy to live with. I nodded once, the way you nod when someone tells you a deadline at work. "All right," I said. "I'll start today." Then I did something that surprised even me. I didn't argue. I didn't ask for a longer timeline. I didn't remind them of what I'd given up. I picked up the dish towel again and folded it into a neat square. I hung it back on the oven handle. I took in the kitchen like I was seeing it for the last time, the clean counters, the bowl of fruit that I kept stocked, the grocery list on the fridge in Jessica's handwriting. Then I walked back to the small room off the garage that they called my studio. It wasn't much bigger than a hotel room, a bed, a dresser, a little table. The air always smelled slightly like cardboard because of the storage boxes stacked along one wall. I sat on the edge of the bed and didn't move for a full minute. Then I did what I always do when something becomes real. I made a plan, in steps, without emotion. Step 1, I found a place of my own. Step 2, I moved my things quietly and completely. Step 3, I made one phone call I'd been putting off. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in years, Richard Chen. Before I hit dial, I looked down at my hands resting in my lap. They were steady. That mattered to me. It told me I was still myself. When Richard answered, his voice was warm, like time hadn't passed. "Patricia Mitchell," he said. "Well, that's a surprise. How are you?" I glanced around my little room, at the packed boxes I hadn't taped shut yet, at the single window that looked out to their driveway. "I'm fine," I told him, "and I'm ready to work again." There was a pause on the line, not an awkward pause, a listening one. "All right," Richard said. "Tell me what's going on." I exhaled through my nose, slow and controlled. Then I looked at the calendar on my wall, one of those simple paper ones, and I noted the date, because I already knew this week was going to matter. And I also knew there was a detail Richard needed to hear first, before anything else, so I said his name again, calmly. "Richard, do you still do acquisitions in Maplewood Heights?" There was a soft sound on the other end of the line, like Richard had shifted in his chair. "Maplewood Heights?" he repeated. "We've been watching it for a while. Why?" I kept my voice steady, the same way I used to in conference calls when everyone else was reacting too fast. "I know a house on Elmwood Drive," I said, "and I know more about it than the owners realize." Richard didn't rush me. He never did. That was one of the reasons he was good at what he did. He let people finish their thoughts. "All right," he said. "Start from the beginning." I looked down at the edge of my bedspread and smoothed it with my palm, once, like the motion could slow my heartbeat. 8 months ago, I told him, I sold my house to help my son and his wife with their down payment. I moved into a garage conversion on their property. I've been paying rent, and today I was told I have 48 hours to leave. Richard exhaled, quiet. "That's a lot," he said. "It is," I agreed, "but I'm not calling to talk about feelings. I'm calling because I'm available and I can be useful." I could hear him smiling a little, even through the phone. "That sounds like you," he said. "Are you looking for consulting work?" "Yes," I said. "Neighborhood assessment, community relations, anything that needs a steady hand." There was a short pause. I pictured him at a desk with papers spread out, the way he always worked. "I've been looking for someone exactly like you," he said. "We're expanding. We buy older properties, renovate them properly, and either sell or convert to high-end rentals. The trick is knowing where to look and what you're walking into." "I understand," I said. "And you're telling me," he continued, "you have first-hand familiarity with Maplewood Heights." "I do," I said, keeping it simple. He didn't ask for gossip. He asked for facts. "What's the address?" he said. I told him. Then I added carefully, "There's unpermitted work on the property, a garage conversion, electrical, plumbing, the kind of shortcuts people take when they're trying to save money." Richard went quiet for a moment, and I could hear the faint tapping of keys. "Okay," he said finally. "If that's accurate, that matters. But Patricia, I need you to be very clear with me. Are you telling me what you know as a professional, or are you asking me to settle a score?" I appreciated the question. I didn't take offense. In my old job, that's the kind of question that kept companies out of trouble. "I'm telling you what I know," I said, "and I'm asking you to consider me for work. The rest is noise." Another pause, longer this time. "All right," he said. "Let's do this correctly. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on 8th and Monroe, 10 a.m. Bring anything you have in writing." "I will," I said. When I ended the call, I didn't move right away. I sat there with my phone in my hand, listening to the house settling around me. Somewhere in the main house, a cabinet door shut. Footsteps crossed the kitchen floor. The muffled sound of a TV turning on. I put the phone face down. Then I stood up and opened my closet. Most of my things were already folded neatly. I'd learned early on that living in someone else's space meant keeping your footprint small. I pulled out a medium suitcase, the hard-sided kind that rolls smoothly, and I set it on the bed. I didn't pack fast. I packed completely. A stack of work blouses, 2 pairs of slacks, 1 blazer, comfortable shoes, toiletries in a clear bag. My important documents folder, the one I always kept in reach. Birth certificate, social security card, passport, old mortgage paperwork, everything in labeled sleeves. I paused at the folder and held it a second longer than I needed to. Because that folder was proof of who I'd been before I squeezed myself into a converted garage and started apologizing for existing. By late afternoon, I was out of the house and in my car, driving with the windows cracked just enough to let in cool air. The sky was pale and bright, and the sunlight bounced off windshields in a way that made the road look washed out. I went straight to a small leasing office downtown that had a unit listed online. It wasn't glamorous. The lobby smelled like carpet cleaner, and the seating was those stiff faux leather chairs that squeak when you shift your weight. A young leasing agent slid a clipboard toward me. Her nails clicked against the desk as she pointed. "Application here, here, and here," she said, "and we'll need proof of income." "I have it," I said, and handed her a folder from my purse without digging around. Her eyebrows lifted slightly as she looked through it. "You're very prepared," she said. "I like to be," I answered. The apartment itself was small, but it was clean. One bedroom, tall windows, quiet hallway, a little balcony that faced a line of trees. When I stepped inside, the air smelled like fresh paint and new caulk. The carpet was still showing vacuum lines. I walked the space slowly. I opened the closet doors. I checked the water pressure in the sink. I stood by the window and listened. No voices through the walls, no footsteps overhead, just a steady, neutral quiet. That was what I was paying for. 2 hours later, I signed the lease. My pen moved smoothly across the paper. The leasing agent stapled the pages and slid me a set of keys on a metal ring. "They're yours," she said. I closed my fingers around them and felt the cool weight in my palm. When I drove back to Marcus's house that evening, the front porch light was on. Jessica's car was in the driveway. The kitchen window glowed warm. I parked at the curb, sat for a moment, and watched the house like it belonged to strangers. Then I got out, walked to my little side entrance, and went back inside to finish packing. I didn't tell them about the lease yet. I didn't tell them about Richard. I just moved quietly through my own space, folding, taping boxes, making small decisions with calm hands. And when I finally lay down that night, I stared at the ceiling and rehearsed what I'd bring to coffee in the morning. Not stories, not accusations, just paperwork, addresses, dates, the kind of things that hold up when feelings don't. The coffee shop on 8th and Monroe opened early, and I arrived earlier than I needed to. I like to sit in a place before I talk in it. It tells me how the room behaves. The air smelled like roasted beans and warm milk. A low hum of conversation filled the space, steady and unhurried. Cups clinked softly against saucers. Someone laughed near the window and then lowered their voice again. It was the kind of place where people came to think, not rush. I chose a small table near the back wall and set my folder down in front of me. I didn't open it yet. I just rested my hands on top and waited. Richard arrived exactly on time. Dark jacket, clean shoes, that familiar look of someone who pays attention even when he's relaxed. He smiled when he saw me. "You haven't changed," he said as he sat down. "Still early." "Still like quiet," I said. We ordered coffee, black for me. He didn't need to ask. When the cups arrived, I took one slow sip before I spoke. "Here's what I know," I said, "and I'll keep it factual." I opened the folder and slid one document at a time across the table. A hand-drawn floor sketch of the garage conversion. Photos on my phone of exposed wiring behind a thin wall panel, a utility bill showing abnormal load spikes after the conversion, a printed email from months earlier where I'd offered to help file permits. "I lived in the space," I said. "I noticed things, I asked questions, I was told it wasn't necessary." Richard didn't interrupt. He studied each page carefully, nodding slightly as he went. "This work would trigger an inspection," he said quietly, "especially with the city review coming up." "Yes," I said, "and that's not the only house." I pulled out a small notebook. It wasn't fancy, just lined paper, the corners bent from being carried around. "For 8 months I watched that block," I said, "because I had time, and because when you live somewhere, you learn its rhythms." I flipped the page. "Number 1251, I said. "Owner in her 90s, yard citations, deferred maintenance." Another page. 1239, divorce, property likely headed for court-ordered sale. Another. 1255, foundation cracks disguised with cosmetic repairs. The listing history tells the story. Richard leaned back slightly, exhaled through his nose. "This isn't gossip," he said. "No," I replied. "It's observation." He closed the notebook gently. "All right," he said. "I want you working with us, officially. We'll do this clean. You'll be a neighborhood consultant. You'll provide assessments, nothing more." "That's what I want," I said. He reached into his bag and pulled out a thin folder. "Contract," he said. "Short-term, renewable, modest retainer to start." I read every line. I always do. Then I signed. The pen made a soft scratching sound that felt louder than it should have. After we stood and said goodbye, I stayed seated for a few extra minutes. I finished my coffee. I watched the light shift slightly across the floor. Then I left. The rest of the day passed quietly. I went back to the house on Elmwood Drive, taped the last box, and carried it to my car. I didn't rush. I didn't sigh. I didn't announce what I was doing. Jessica glanced out from the kitchen once. Marcus avoided eye contact entirely. I didn't need to say anything. By Saturday afternoon, I was standing in my new apartment, keys in my hand, door open behind me. The place echoed when I stepped inside. That kind of echo only happens in empty spaces. I set my purse down on the kitchen counter and leaned there for a moment. Then I did something small and grounding. I unpacked my coffee mug first. I placed it in the cabinet above the sink. I ran the tap just to hear the water move through new pipes. I opened the balcony door and let fresh air in. When my phone buzzed, I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. Marcus. I put the phone face down. Later that evening, I called Richard back. "I'm settled," I said, "and ready." "Good," he replied. "Monday, we start site visits. And Patricia, there's one property I want to prioritize." I already knew which one he meant. "Elmwood Drive," I said. "Yes," he said. "If the information holds, we'll make an offer. Clean, professional." "I understand," I said. After the call ended, I sat on the floor of my living room, back against the wall, legs stretched out in front of me. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt intentional, not empty. I didn't feel angry. I felt organized. And I knew the next phase wouldn't require emotion at all, just timing. Monday morning came with clear weather and a full calendar. I dressed the way I always did for site work. Neutral colors, comfortable shoes, nothing that drew attention. I liked to blend into a space before I evaluated it. Richard picked me up a block from my apartment. His car was clean and quiet, the kind of vehicle that doesn't announce itself. We drove without music. As we turned into Maplewood Heights, the neighborhood looked exactly the way it always had. Tree-lined streets, wide sidewalks, houses set back just enough to feel private. The kind of place people describe as stable. Stability can hide a lot. We parked at the end of the block and walked slowly, not like inspectors, not like buyers, just two people taking their time. I stayed with each house longer than necessary, 8 or 10 sentences worth of silence at a time, looking, listening, letting the place tell its story. At 1247 Elmwood Drive, I stopped. "That's the one," I said. Richard didn't step onto the driveway yet. He stood beside me on the sidewalk. "Tell me what matters," he said. I didn't talk about feelings. I talked about facts. The garage was converted without permits, I said. Electrical load isn't balanced. Bathroom addition doesn't meet clearance requirements. Insulation is substandard. If the city inspects, they won't have a choice. Richard nodded once. And the owners? He asked. They're stretched, I said. Mortgage plus credit cards. Baby coming. No room for surprise expenses. We stood there a moment longer. A car passed. A dog barked 2 houses down. Okay, he said, we proceed the right way. That afternoon, his office prepared a standard acquisition packet. No threats, no pressure, just information and an offer. By Wednesday, the city notice arrived. It came in a plain envelope, no dramatic language, just dates, requirements, and the word inspection underlined. Marcus called me that evening. I didn't answer. I watched the sun drop behind the buildings outside my balcony. I watered the small plant I'd bought for the living room. I waited. He called again the next morning. This time I picked up. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked right away. "What's happening?" I leaned against the counter and looked at the clean surface I'd wiped down that morning. "The city is doing inspections," I said. "You received the notice." "This can't be a coincidence," he said. "Richard Chen came by yesterday." "I know," I said. "You knew about this," he said. "I knew inspections were coming," I said. "I tried to talk to you about permits months ago." "That was different," he said quickly. "No," I replied. "It wasn't." There was breathing on the line, then silence. Jessica took the phone. "How much?" she asked. "How much what?" I said. "To fix it," she said, "if we don't sell." I closed my eyes briefly, not in pain, just in calculation. 10 to 25,000, I said. Best estimate. She didn't respond right away. "We don't have that," she said finally. "I know," I said. "So you're forcing us to sell," she said. I corrected her gently. "No, I stopped preventing the outcome." She hung up. On Friday afternoon, Richard and I walked up the driveway together. I stayed slightly behind him. That was intentional. Marcus opened the door. His face looked tired, older than it had a month ago. Richard introduced himself, offered the card, explained the offer in neutral terms. I watched from the side as paperwork did the talking. Jessica stood behind Marcus, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping the door frame. When Richard finished, there was nothing left to argue about. The numbers were clear. The timeline was clear. "We need time," Marcus said. "You have until Monday," Richard replied calmly. "After that, the city process continues." We left without shaking hands. Back in the car, Richard looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. And I meant it. That night I cooked dinner for myself, nothing fancy. I ate at my small table and read a few pages of a book. I washed my plate and set it in the rack. Then I waited. Because once the paperwork starts moving, feelings don't slow it down, and everything after that is just response. Saturday passed quietly. That was deliberate. I stayed in my apartment. I cleaned the kitchen in slow, methodical motions. I folded laundry while listening to the low murmur of the radio, nothing important enough to focus on. When the machine finished, I left the clothes in the dryer for a while before taking them out. I wasn't in a hurry. Around noon, I sat at my small table and reviewed documents. Not because I needed to, but because order settles me. Lease agreement, consulting contract, bank statements, everything where it belonged. I put the phone face down. It rang twice anyway. I didn't answer. By Sunday afternoon, curiosity turned into pressure. That's usually how it goes. People start by wanting information. When they don't get it, they reach for emotion. Jessica showed up at my building just after 4. I saw her through the glass entry door before she buzzed. She looked smaller than I remembered, tired. Her hand rested on her belly, more out of habit than comfort. I didn't invite her in. I opened the door and stood in the frame. "Can we talk?" she asked. "I'm listening," I said. She swallowed. "This isn't fair." I didn't respond. I let the hallway fill the space between us. Someone down the corridor opened and closed a door. Footsteps faded. "We were stressed," she continued. "You know that." "Yes," I said. "I was there." She shifted her weight. "You didn't have to do this." I looked at her carefully before answering. "This," I said, "was already happening. I didn't start it." She stared at me, like she was waiting for something else, an apology maybe, or reassurance. Instead, I said, "You should talk to your lender and a contractor today." Her eyes flicked up. "Why?" "Because Monday isn't a discussion," I said. "It's a deadline." She left without saying goodbye. That evening, I made soup, the simple kind. I ate slowly and washed the pot while it was still warm. Then I sat by the window and watched the streetlights come on one by one. Monday morning arrived without ceremony. At 9:30, Richard called. "They want to negotiate," he said. "They will," I replied. "They're asking if we can extend the timeline." "The city won't," I said. "Correct," he said. "I'll meet them at 10. After the call, I didn't pace. I didn't rehearse conversations. I brewed coffee and drank it standing at the counter. At 10:45, my phone rang. Marcus. I answered. "Mom," he said, "we're in over our heads." I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes for a moment. "I know," I said. "You knew all along," he said. "I knew what happens when things are left unfinished," I said. "I tried to help you finish them." Jessica's voice came through, faint but sharp. "So what now?" I opened the folder I'd kept on the counter. Inside were copies of things I hadn't shared before. "Step 1, I said calmly. "You decide whether you want certainty or hope." "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. "Certainty is selling," I said. "Hope is paying to fix the work and waiting for inspections. Hope is expensive." Silence. "Step 2, I continued. "You stop blaming me. That doesn't change outcomes." More silence. "Step 3, I said. "You make a decision together, not with me, without me." Jessica spoke again. "Are you helping us or not?" I considered that question carefully. "I'm not protecting you," I said. "There's a difference." The line went quiet. Then Marcus said very softly, "We need time." "You've used it," I said. After I hung up, I put the phone face down. At noon, Richard called again. "They're accepting the offer," he said, "as written." "All right," I said. "Patricia," he added, "I want to be clear. You did nothing improper." "I know," I said. The rest of the day unfolded in paperwork. Electronic signatures, confirmations, neutral language, no raised voices, no drama. That evening I walked to the corner store and bought a small plant for my balcony. I carried it home carefully like it mattered. I set it in the sun and watered it just enough. Then I sat down and waited again, because the next conversation wouldn't be about property. It would be about consequences. The call came Tuesday evening. I was standing at the sink, rinsing a plate, when my phone buzzed against the counter. I dried my hands first. That was another choice. I don't like answering serious calls with wet hands. It was Marcus. I picked up. "We signed," he said. His voice sounded flat, like he'd already gone past panic and landed somewhere quieter. "I know," I said. There was a pause. I could hear movement on his end, a drawer opening, paper sliding, the ordinary sounds of a life still happening. "They're coming out next week," he said. "The developers, inspections, walkthroughs, everything." "Yes," I said. Another pause. "I didn't think it would feel like this," he admitted. "Selling the house. I thought it would feel like relief. It doesn't." I leaned my hip against the counter and looked at the small plant by the window. Its leaves were still glossy from earlier. "What does it feel like?" I asked. "Like we skipped something," he said. "Like we rushed past a point where we were supposed to stop and fix things." I didn't respond right away. I let that sit between us. "That point," I said finally, "was months ago." Jessica took the phone. "Can I come by tomorrow?" she asked. "Just to talk. I won't argue." I considered the question carefully. "Yes," I said. "Tomorrow afternoon, for a short time." When I hung up, I put the phone face down and finished washing the plate. I dried it and set it in the cabinet. Then I wiped the counter once, even though it was already clean. The next day, Jessica arrived exactly on time. She stood in my living room, hands clasped in front of her, eyes moving over the space. The quiet, the order, the absence of apology gifts or dramatic gestures. "I didn't realize," she said finally, "that you'd leave so completely." I sat in the chair across from her and waited. "I thought you'd be upset," she continued. "Angry. I thought maybe you'd fight." "I did," I said. "Just not the way you expected." She nodded slowly. "We have to move out in 60 days, she said. They were clear about that. "Yes," I said. "We're staying with my parents for a while," she added. "Just until we figure things out." I didn't comment. She looked at me then, really looked. "I didn't think about what it would feel like," she said, "to be told to leave, to have a timeline put on your life." I folded my hands in my lap. "That was clear," I said. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She just sat there, absorbing the weight of it. "I'm sorry," she said, "not because we need something, because I understand now." I watched her face closely, not for performance, for steadiness. "I hear you," I said. That was all. She left after 20 minutes. We didn't hug. We didn't promise anything. Later that night, Richard emailed me the final closing schedule. Dates, numbers, clean lines. I read it once and archived it. The next morning, I went back to my routine. Work calls, coffee, a short walk around the block, and for the first time in a long while, nothing felt unfinished. Because the part that mattered wasn't the house. It was the silence I'd stopped filling for other people. And that part was finally settled. The paperwork moved faster than I expected. Once decisions are made, systems don't hesitate. Appraisals were scheduled. Inspectors came through with clipboards and quiet efficiency. I wasn't present for any of it. I didn't need to be. I stayed in my lane. Richard kept me updated in short, factual messages, dates, confirmations, no commentary. On Thursday afternoon, Marcus called again. This time his voice sounded different, slower, more careful. "They found more issues than we thought," he said. "Structural, electrical, stuff we never would have noticed." I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. "That happens," I said. "We would have lost the house anyway," he added, "even without the sale." "Yes," I said. Another pause. "I should have listened to you," he said, "back when you talked about permits." I didn't rush to reassure him. "I did talk about them," I said. "That's true." He exhaled. "I don't know how we got here." "You do," I said. "You just didn't want to see it all at once." Jessica got on the line. "We're not angry anymore," she said quietly. "Just tired." "I understand," I said. "We'll be okay," she added. "Eventually." "Yes," I said again. That was the end of that call. 2 weeks later, the sale closed. The confirmation email came through at 9:12 a.m. I was at my desk with a cup of coffee beside me and a legal pad open, even though I wasn't writing anything on it. I read the message once. Then I closed my laptop. There was nothing to celebrate and nothing to mourn. It was simply finished. That evening, Marcus texted instead of calling. We're packing. House will be empty by Sunday. I didn't reply right away. I made dinner. I ate it slowly. I rinsed my plate and let it air dry. Then I typed back, "Take care of yourselves." He responded a few minutes later, "We will. Thank you for being honest, even when it hurt." I put the phone face down. Sunday came and went. I didn't drive past Elmwood Drive. I didn't watch the movers. I didn't check listings. I stayed home. On Monday morning, I walked to work and back. The same route I'd been taking since I moved. The sidewalk cracked in the same places. The bakery on the corner smelled like warm bread. A woman I recognized but didn't know nodded at me in passing. Life, steady and ordinary. That afternoon, Richard stopped by my office. "Everything's wrapped," he said. "Clean ending." "That's good," I replied. He hesitated, then asked, "Do you want to stay on longer? There are other neighborhoods, other assessments." "Yes," I said, "part-time." He smiled. "I thought you'd say that." After he left, I sat quietly for a while, not thinking about strategy, not reviewing anything, just sitting. Later that week, I received a letter forwarded from Marcus's old address. No return address, just handwriting I recognized. It was short. "We're settling in at my parents' place. It's not perfect, but it's temporary. We're learning how to manage things ourselves. I know trust takes time. We'll wait." I folded the letter once and placed it in a drawer. Not for safekeeping, just for acknowledgement. That night I stood on my balcony with a cup of tea and watched the city settle into evening. Lights turning on, windows glowing. I didn't feel victorious. I felt quiet, and that was enough. I went inside, closed the door, and locked it gently behind me. Then I waited. Because the story wasn't over yet, but the part where I had to prove anything was. The next change came quietly. No phone call, no knock at the door. Just an email from a city address I recognized. The subject line was plain: "Inspection closure notice, Maplewood Heights." I opened it at my desk and read it once, carefully. The inspections had been completed, reports finalized, no further action required from the previous owners. The matter was closed. Closed is a good word. It doesn't celebrate. It doesn't accuse. It just means something has ended. I forwarded the email to Richard and archived it. That afternoon I went for a walk after work. The weather had shifted, cooler air, the kind that makes you straighten your shoulders without thinking about it. I walked the same route as always, past the bakery, past the small park where people sat on benches scrolling their phones. When I got home, there was a message waiting, Marcus again, not a call, a text. "We moved in with Jessica's parents. It's crowded, but it's fine. They've been firm, in a good way." I smiled at that, not because it was funny, because it sounded like growth. He sent another message a few minutes later. "I want you to know something. I didn't lose the house because of you. I lost it because I ignored things that mattered." I didn't reply right away. I made tea. I let it steep longer than usual. I stood by the counter and watched the steam rise and fade. Then I typed back, "I'm glad you see that. Take care of yourselves." That was it. A week passed, then another. Life settled into a rhythm that felt like mine again. Work a few days a week, quiet mornings, groceries bought for one, dinners eaten without commentary, mail opened without anyone asking what it was. One evening there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Marcus stood there alone. No Jessica this time. No urgency in his posture. He held a small envelope in his hands, not offering it yet. "I won't stay long," he said. "All right," I replied. We stood in the doorway for a moment before I stepped aside. He came in, looking around like someone visiting a place that mattered. "I brought you something," he said, finally handing me the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check. It wasn't large, it wasn't symbolic, it was specific. "The rent," he said, "from the last month, the one we never paid you back." I looked at it, then at him. "You don't have to," I began. "I do," he said gently but firmly. "Not because you need it, because I need to do it." I nodded once and set the check on the table. We sat for a few minutes, not talking, just being in the same room without tension pulling at the edges. "I'm not asking you to fix anything," he said, "or to come back. I just wanted you to know. I understand now what you meant when you said you stopped protecting us." I folded my hands in my lap. "That understanding," I said, "is what matters." He stood to leave shortly after. At the door, he hesitated. "Jessica wanted to come," he said, "but I told her this was mine to do first." "That was the right choice," I said. After he left, I locked the door and leaned against it for a moment. Not because I was overwhelmed, just because stillness felt appropriate. Later that night, I took the envelope and placed it in my drawer beneath the letter I'd saved earlier. Not as proof, as progress. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something settle into place that hadn't been there before. Not forgiveness, clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is enough to build something new on. The weeks that followed were quiet in a way that felt earned, not empty, not lonely, just settled. Most mornings I woke before my alarm. I made coffee and stood by the window while the city stretched itself awake. I watered the plant on the balcony. I straightened the kitchen even when it didn't need it. Small routines. Mine. Work stayed steady. A few site reviews, a few meetings, nothing dramatic. Just systems doing what systems do when people follow the rules. I saw Marcus and Jessica again a month later. We met in a public place, a cafe near the park, neutral ground. I arrived early and chose a table near the window. When they walked in, they looked different. Tired, yes, but steadier, less defensive. We talked about practical things, how they were managing, what came next. No apologies, no revisiting old scenes. That mattered. When Jessica thanked me for meeting them, I nodded once. I didn't say much. Gratitude doesn't need encouragement. It needs consistency. After that, we settled into something workable. Dinner every couple of weeks, short visits, clear boundaries, no assumptions. I didn't move back in. I didn't offer solutions unless I was asked. And when I was asked, I answered without taking over. That was the rule. One evening, while washing dishes, I caught my reflection in the window. Same face, same hands, but the way I stood had changed, shoulders relaxed, chin level. I put the phone face down. That became another rule. Not every message needs an immediate answer. Silence, used carefully, is not absence, it's choice. On Sundays, I cleaned my apartment slowly. On Wednesdays, I worked late and ordered something simple for dinner. On Fridays, I walked past the bakery and bought bread even when I didn't need it. Life didn't expand. It aligned. A few months later, Richard mentioned another situation during a drive. Different neighborhood, similar family dynamics, someone older, someone being quietly pushed aside. I listened. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "Give them my number if they ask." That was all, not because I needed to fix anything, but because sometimes people just need to know someone is steady on the other end of the line. At home that night, I made tea and sat on the balcony as the lights came on across the street. I watched people move through their evenings, windows glowing, doors opening and closing. I felt ownership, not over people, over myself. That's the part I keep. If this story felt familiar, or if you've ever had to step back to protect your dignity, you're not alone here. If you'd like, take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps this little community grow. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. I read those. Two popular stories are coming up next, and I think you'll recognize pieces of them too. Until then, take care of your space, and don't be afraid to choose quiet when it's earned.